What's going on, everyone? It's Ben from YGO from Zero back with another retro Yu-Gi-Oh video, and this is going to be a special one as it's the last video in my planned regular coverage of Yata format. There were a couple other edge decks that I could potentially play, like Reversal Quiz OTK, but in tinkering with that deck, I really couldn't see any good way to actually construct it in a way that actually made it work most of the time. So I sort of treat that sort of like a Gate Guardian level thing for Critter, where I didn't cover Gate Guardian and Critter because the deck was just really not good, and it would never really get off its win condition. Same sort of thing with Reversal Quiz OTK. Of course, if someone comes up with a build that can actually do stuff and they, show it off to me, and, I won't say no to covering a deck like that in the future, but I'll probably wait a couple formats for now, just until it gets some more cards to help it out a bit. And there will be cards coming in the future to actually make it more consistent into the library FDK that a lot of people know from things like GOAT format and other formats with those cards in it. So, I will be covering that deck at some point in the future, but I don't think it's quite there yet. But this is the last big deck that I wanted to cover for Yata format, and that is Zombies. Now, Zombies is a very interesting deck because Pyramid Turtle is one of the most powerful recruiters in the game. It says when this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon one zombie monster with 2,000 or less defense from your deck. This can be an attack or defense mode, which provides a bit of versatility. If you want to wall up, you can bring out a Spirit Reaper, and if you want to bring out a big beater, you can do that as well. Unfortunately, at this point in time, the only zombie monsters in the format that are actually have a high attack stat and a relatively low defense stat is Patrician of Darkness and Shadow Ghoul, neither of which are the best. I do have one of each because there are certain situations where you've gone through a lot of cards in your deck where Shadow Ghoul is actually bigger than Patrician, so you'd want to bring that out. But Patrician's a 2k monster, so it's not bad either. So these are just sort of the big beaters to fetch off the Pyramid Turtles. Oftentimes, just fetching out another Pyramid Turtle in defense is enough as well. But this is just good enough to build an entire deck around. So that's what I've done. Now, when I say good enough to build an entire deck around, I don't think this deck is like tier 1 or anything, but I do think it is pretty good, and it can win you some games a fair amount of the time. And some other things to note about the zombie strategy that, help it out a bit is Book of Life. Book of Life is basically Monster Reborn, but it also banishes a monster from your opponent's graveyard, which is really good when things like Sinister Serpent are running around. So what you can do is you can Book of Life a monster and then banish Sinister Serpent to deprive your opponent of that recurable resource, which can be very, very good, especially if you're getting in every turn with Spirit Reapers, which you do have a lot of access to in this deck, given that you've got these Pyramid Turtles. We're also playing another set of recruiters in the form of Giant Rat. Giant Rat can fetch out a Pyramid Turtle, which can go into one of your bigger guys. I was just debating having just Mystic Tomatoes here to fetch out Sangan or Witch, as well as potentially a Spirit Reaper. And I think that is a direction you can go. As, you don't necessarily want your rats to go into your turtles, into your other stuff. This isn't something like Dead Rat and Reaper format where, you have a big monster that you actively want to get out, so the more ways you can get to that, the better. This deck does have a, decently big monster, but Patrician is definitely not the end-all be-all because it's only got 2k attack, which is not the best in this format, especially when things like Gravekeepers Spy are seeing more play in this format than ever before. So we do have the rats, but I think this could definitely be tomatoes. Rat can also go into Injection Fairy Lily and Exiled Force, though, both of which are very good. So, that's nice options to have there. And then for the last monster in this deck, besides Sangan, Witch, and Serpent, we've also got a Fiber Jar here, just to shuffle everything back into the deck. This can also pair well with Book of Life, as if you banish your opponent's most powerful monsters, then when you Fiber Jar, you'll be getting back all of your powerful monsters, but your opponent won't be getting back theirs. So that's another nice benefit to Book of Life. So as I mentioned, we've got the 3 Book of Lives. We've got Change of Heart, Confiscation, Darkhold, Delinquent Duo, Graceful Charity, Mirage of Nightmare, Monster Reborn, Triple MST, Painful Choice, Pot of Greed, Raigeki, Snatch Steal, and Forceful Sentry. So basically a who's who of very powerful spells in this format. We're not playing Harpy's Feather Duster in the main deck just because there wasn't quite enough deck space for it. And also we're playing a trap that can hopefully make up for it. For the traps, we've got Imperial Order, Mirror Force, and the trap that I mentioned, Raigeki Break, at 3 copies. Now the reason we have this is, 1, I think it pairs well with Sinister Serpent Serpent. But, you know, every deck's playing Sinister Serpent, so why aren't they playing Raigeki Break? Well, maybe it should be something that people play in the future. But the main reason why I wanted to do this is because you can also pitch a zombie that you can then get back off of Book of Life. So it pairs well with that. If you draw your tribute bricks, then you can get them out of your hand, get them in graveyard to revive with Book, and so I think it's pretty good. And I do think this card's just good spot removal, especially if you've got like Spirit Reapers on field that you just want to get hitting in to your opponent's life points with and just ripping cards out of their hand. Raigeki Break can clear the way for that in a way that something like Torrential Tribute might not be able to. So that's why we're playing this card at 3 copies here. And lastly, for the traps, we've got Ring of Destruction, which is a very powerful trap in this format, and can deal with a plethora of things, as well as potentially ending the game. The side deck's a bit rough. I think that 3 Torrential Tribute is very good. It's against more aggressive decks here. We've got a Ceasefire and Nobleman of Crossout ×2 for more flip-focused decks. We've got Call of the Haunted here. Now, this is more because I cut it from the main deck, and I, you know, just in case I wanted to bring it back in and experiment with it more, it's here if I wanted to. But I figured with all the Graveyard Revival that we do have, this is kind of unnecessary. Also, it doesn't pair well with Reaper, as if you bring back Reaper off Call of the Haunted, then Reaper will then pop itself because, you know, if it's targeted by infect, then it will be destroyed. So Call of the Haunted won't play well with that, but, you know, Reaper can be brought back off of things like Book of Life and Monster Reborn. We've also got a Harpy's Feather Duster and a Heavy Storm for more back row focused decks, and then just a hodgepodge of good monsters that I think might come up. We've got a Kaiku the Ghost Destroyer and a Gemini Elf if we want more aggressive pressure. One of these could definitely be a Bazoo, but given all the graveyard recursion we've got in our deck, I don't necessarily think Bazoo plays the best with this deck. We've also got a Jinzo for more back row heavy strategies. This can be good, or just trap strategies in general. We've got 2 Magician of Faith in case, you know, we have the time to bring back spells. Maybe against a slower deck, this could be good. We've also got a Yata to close out some games. If our opponent's playing a deck that's monster light, then this could be good to bring in potentially. And then for the fusion deck, we've got just a hodgepodge of good fusion monsters. Now, speaking of fusion monsters, something that you could potentially do with the zombie deck is you could play like 3 copies of Metamorphosis and 3 like Dark Balters or Reaper of the Nightmare, because, you know, Pyramid Turtle lets you access level 5s very easily in the form of Patrician and Shadow Ghoul. So you might just want to have that Metamorphosis package online because Dark Balter is insanely good in this format. So that's potentially another Metamorphosis strategy you could do. I've covered a lot of Metamorphosis strategies on the channel in the past couple videos, so I chose not to go this route, but I'm curious to see if people experiment with it further and try that out. Now, I tried to make this zombie deck play to the best of the zombie strategy's strengths, in my opinion. There are definitely other ways to go. You know, zombies also have more of a Pac-Man variant that I don't think is very good, but it does exist. You can also do things like Fushio Richie. You can try and bring that monster out. I initially was going to try to do that here, but then I realized, you know, if I want to show off what this deck can actually do, because I think that this deck actually can do something, and there are potential reasons to play it, I should actually play, you know, a more competitive version of it, and maybe save a Fushio Richie video for, you know, if enough people want that, or maybe in the future as like a sub goal. So you know, if people really want the Fushio Richie version, I can make it later in the future. But, you know, for now, I just wanted to show off what this deck can do at its peak competitive capacity. And I'm not claiming that this is the most optimized deck out there. I think there are definitely some major flaws to this deck. But I think that this is a good approximation for what a competitive zombie deck might look like. So let's see how it does in some games. Okay, we've got a game against MLP Pinkie Pie, and this is actually cool because this was just a game I hosted on DB. I said Yata in the dual tag, and, you know, I wasn't too hopeful that people would join, as Yata is a pretty niche format, but then MLP Pinkie Pie did join, and so, you know, we had a great game, and so that should show, like, if you do want to play any games in this format, you know, and you don't necessarily want to tag people on the Discord, which I think that the Discord is honestly one of the best ways to do it. Link is in the description down below, but it's a great place to find games in these formats. But if you just want to, you know, maybe you can't find anyone on the Discord, or you just want someone new, then you can just make a room on Dueling Book and just put in the dueling note Yata, and people will join. So exciting to see someone take me up on this dueling room here. But we're going to go into the games here. We do win the rock, paper, scissors, so we will be going first, which is pretty decent for this deck. I don't think this deck really cares as much as some other decks about going first or second. But this is a pretty good hand to open with. We can start by either setting Reaper or Serpent, and then follow it up with an Exiled Force next turn. If they set something, if we set the Serpent, or no, if we set the Reaper, we can flip that up, hit in for hand rip. So we could do that. I think it might be a little bit aggressive because if we like T-set and pass, they might T-set and pass as well. And if they do that, they might just be setting like a Witch or a Sangan. So we don't necessarily want to do the Exiled Forest Spirit Reaper path. I think I'm going to do the safer play, and I'm just going to set a Sinister Serpent. I'm going to set a Ring of Destruction. I think I could have probably just set an MST here. And that might have been the safer option to do. But I figure, like, Ring is good for edge cases. They could have, like, Nobleman of Crossout, plus, like, a Dawn Zalug or something. And in that case, I really do want the Ring of Destruction on field. So I'm just going to pass back to my opponent. They go for a Dark Hole here. Luckily, we set the Sinister Serpent, so that won't be as big of a deal for us. Then they go for an MST on a Ring. That's really unfortunate. If I had set the MST instead of the Ring, then that might not have happened. But then again, you know, the Nobleman into Dawn Zalug play was also a very possible thing that can happen. So it might have been the correct play after all. We head back the Sinister Serpent here, and given that they just set instead of summoning out and attacking, I have to read that that's not like a Sangan or a Witch, because if it was a Sangan or a Witch, they wouldn't have been afraid to just attack in. So I have to read that that's actually something live, like maybe a Magician of Faith or a Fiber Jar or something. So I actually just go for an Exiled Force here, tribute it off, and pop that set. And it is a Fiber Jar, so I'm very happy that I did that. I'm going to set an Imperial Order and an MST pass back to them. They could have Harpies plus MST in hand, which would, you know, counter this quite a bit. But they already used up one MST, so I feel fine about going for this. And, you know, that's 2 cards out of their hand if they do have both of those. So they go for a Pot of Greed. We're going to go for this Imperial Order here. They bring out a Mystic Tomato, and they hit in for 1,400. So that's a bit painful, but we've got some options for what to do here. Raigeki Break is really good. We could set the Reaper, then set Raigeki Break, pitch the Sinister Serpent popping their Tomato, and then get in for a hand rip next turn. So that's my game plan here. We're going to go for that. And they just hit in to our set. It is just the Reaper. They're going to go for another Tomato there and pass back to us, which really does put a damper on our plans here. We could potentially just bring out Patrician and start hitting in. That might actually be the best move to do, but we draw this Witch, so Witch can search us into something else. So we're going to go for that instead. They're just going to set one, hit in to our Witch with the Sangan, or not the Sangan, the Tomato. We're going to grab a Giant Rat here. We draw again, we draw another Giant Rat, which is very unfortunate. We can't quite go the full Rat / Tomato crashing distance, but honestly, yeah, no, this is really bad for us because what we could have potentially done before is summoned out a Rat, attacked in, and then they've only got one more Tomato left in deck, and so we could have crashed 2 Rats into their 2 Tomatoes. If they brought Zalug, we could have brought out the 3rd Rat, and then attacked that into the Zalug that they brought out. But as is, we can't quite do that here, and we don't necessarily want to risk that they do have a Zalug there, so yeah, it's kind of rough. We're just going to set the Rat pass back to them instead of going aggressive here. Unfortunately, we are like bleeding life points from this IO that we do, I think, want to keep up since we've got a pretty good board set up. They drop off our Pyramid Turtle, which is pretty rough. We will indeed pay that 700. We're just going to get aggressive this way, bring out a Patrician of Darkness, hitting into their Tomato, seeing what they get out. And they're going to bring out a Sangan here, which makes sense given that, you know, they've only got 1 Tomato left in deck, so... and also this preserves them against like Raigeki or Darkhold or something like that. So they're going to set one, switch their monster defense, pass back to us. We will indeed pay these 700 again. I'm getting really concerned about a potential Ring of Destruction in our future on something like Patrician of Darkness. That would be really bad for us. So what I'm actually going to do here, I'm going to hit into the Sangan. They've got Mirror Force, so yeah, kind of unfortunate, but this is why we didn't commit another monster board. But what I was planning to do was hit into the Sangan with the Patrician, then Raigeki break their Tomato and hit in for direct with the Spirit Reaper, pitch a card out of their hand, and I would have been okay with that, but as is, we're in a bit of a tougher spot. We're going to set this Rat because it does wall up against the Tomato. They draw another Tomato, which is really unfortunate for them, but also kind of unfortunate for us, as now they've got another Searcher on field. We draw another Raigeki break, which can deal with both their Tomatoes. So we could have potentially kept the order up, but we're dropping like really low. And so we're almost getting to the point where like, you know, ring on Patrician, which we may summon back off of Book of Life, or, you know, if they've got another tribute monster like Hades or something like that, ring on that would just kill us. So I don't actually want to pay these 700. I think I'm pretty okay with this board. They're going to go for an MST on the Raigeki because we try and pop the MST there. So we pitch the Serpent, pop their Tomato here, and then we're just going to set a Sangan, set a break, pass back to them. Now, I don't have any cards in hand, so it may seem weird why I'm setting the break. The reason I do this is I figure, like, we want the break in case they have a way to clear our board and then get in for a lot of damage. If they clear our board, then we get to search off Sangan, and then we can Raigeki break, pitching whatever we search. So I figure it's good as like an extreme backup measure if they do have like Raigeki, which would be really bad for us here. So that's why I do that. They have Harpies though, so they do clear the break. We're not able to chain it because we used Serpent last turn. And they're going to go for a Snatch Steal, taking control of our rat. We do get a search off this Sangan here, searching out another rat because they'll wall up against their entire board here. And maybe we'll be able to actually gain some life points, but they're going to hit in for everything. Fire a duo, so that's unfortunate. We lose the rat and pass back to us. Luckily, we draw this Pyramid Turtle, so we will be able to still wall up against their whole board. We'll set that, pass back to them. And unfortunately, they do have Change of Heart, so they will be able to take control of our monster and get in for lethal damage there. So, kind of rough game one. I think, yeah, it was a bit tricky in terms of how to play that. I think maybe if I had played a bit more aggressively while I was up, things could have potentially turned out differently. But then again, Mirror Force, you know, they had that at some point, so they would have been able to use that later. And I don't know. It's a bit tricky. Maybe I should have kept IO up for longer as well. Maybe that would have been good. There's a lot of different factors here that could have come into play. So, I feel like we played that pretty decently, but we did learn some things for game 2 and game 3. So let's just go into those. I don't really side up anything differently here, as it seems like they were on pretty much a basic, you know, like good stuff deck. So I figured, you know, we can just keep the deck largely the same. The hand rips are still good because we're going first. And speaking of hand rips, we've got a Delinquent Duo. We're just going to fire that. Now, with this deck, there is actually a major argument for, like, holding on to Duo until you have, like, a Book of Life plus a Zombie Engrave. Because if they do have, like, Sinister Serpent and they pitch that, then you want to be able to banish that off Book of Life. So you might want to save the Duo for later. I just fire it now. I figure the odds of them opening Serpent in hand are relatively low. And, like, ultimately, like, we can deal with that Serpent later if we do draw Book of Life later. So, and knowing about that Serpent is also pretty good. So I'm just going to go for the Duo now. They pitch an MST and a Jinzo here. We're just going to set a Turtle and an MST of our own. Pass back to them. They're going to go for Reborn on the Jinzo. So I guess our Duo did kind of benefit them there. Bring that out, set one, set another, and attack into our set, playing around Morphing Jar, it looks like. We're just going to bring out another Turtle in defense. I actually debated going for like a Reaper here if we somehow manage to clear their field, because then we can get into for a hand rip, which would be pretty good. But I feel like Turtle's the safer option, so that's what I do. And we draw another MST, which isn't the best. We're going to set a Giant Rat here, pass back to them. Rat can be pretty good at getting out something like Exiled Force later on, which is nice. They're going to MST our set. We MST their set, which was called Haunted. They're going to attack into our set there. It's a rat. We bring out an Exiled Force because they have no other attacking pressure. And they're just going to pass back to us. Now, we actually have a bit of a choice here. We could Exiled Force, pop their Jinzo, Exiled Force, pop their set, and then, you know, using Monster Reborn. So we Exiled Force, pop Jinzo, Reborn, the Exiled Force, pop their set, and then get in for some damage with Pyramid Turtles. I elect not to do this, figuring that the set is probably something we can run over with the Turtle. So I feel like it's fine. And if it is something like Magician of Faith, then, you know, they'll get back like Monster Reborn probably, but then we can Book of Life banishing the Jinzo in main phase 2. So I feel like it's ultimately fine. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to Exiled Force, target the Jinzo, set an MST here to play around Morphing Jar. I don't think it's Morphing Jar, but it could be. I mean, I probably should have set everything if I was worried it was Morphing Jar. But, like, I don't really want to commit into everything because I don't think it's Morphing Jar. And this is just sort of playing around Morphing Jar anyways, because I set this at the end of the turn anyways. So we're going to just attack in. It's a Magician of Faith. They added back a Monster Reborn there, which is a bit unfortunate. But luckily, even if they bring back a Reborn, then we can actually deprive them of any good targets, because what we can do is we can just Book of Life this, bring back our Pyramid Turtle, banish their Jinzo, and then they don't really have any targets left. Like, they could bring back Exiled Force and pop one of our Turtles, but we still got a Turtle remaining. They could also bring back a Giant Rat, but then we can always bring out like a Patrician if they hit into a Pyramid Turtle, and then hit over Giant Rat, bring out a monster of our own next turn. So they don't really have any good targets now. They could potentially get stuff later, which would be a bit unfortunate, but I'm feeling pretty good about this. They're just going to set one, pass back to us. We draw a Pot of Greed. We're just going to go for that. Woo! This is a pretty good hand now. This can allow us to like overcommit a little bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to Reborn, target our Exiled Force, pop that set, and then get in with a Spirit Reaper here, ripping a card out of their hand. It is a bit of an overcommitment, but we've also got Mirage of Nightmare to draw us more cards here. So We're going to hit in for 2,700, and then we're going to rip this card out of their hand. It's a Yata. We feel very good about getting that out of the way. Because now I think we know their last... It's just Reborn, yeah. So they can Reborn back the Zaluk, which is a bit unfortunate. But we've got a full hand after Mirage, and we can always MST the Mirage. So we're not too worried about that. They're going to go for the Reborn here, bring back that Zalug and face-up attack. They're going to hit into the Spirit Reaper here. That's fine by us. They hit the Rat there. So honestly, one of the better cards they could have ripped from our hand, because we've got Raigeki. We've got Spirit Reaper if we want another hand rip on board. So we feel very, very good about this. We draw a Change of Heart, which is also good. We can potentially get really aggressive here. Potentially just Change of Hearting their Zalug. That's 17, 29, 31, and then we can't quite get lethal, but that still would be a lot of damage here. So something to consider. But we MST our Mirage. And then we're just going to fire this Raigeki here. Clear the way, get in for a 2-turn clock. We've got Change of Heart. And so I feel pretty good about this. They're going to go for Snatch Steal on the Pyramid Turtle. This is pretty much the only thing they can do here, even though it's kind of rough for them. Now, we could potentially play into TT or Mirror Force here by summoning out like a Pyramid Turtle. It likely isn't Mirror Force that they've got set, or they might not have gone for this play. But they could very easily have like a TT set. And so I don't necessarily want to play into the TT. We could have also potentially Change of Hearted the Pyramid Turtle and gone for lethal that way. In hindsight, that probably would have been the best thing to do. But we're going to hit in with our Pyramid Turtle here. Unfortunately, they've got Ring. Change of Heart would have potentially played around this a little bit, although we wouldn't get lethal here, which means that the Change of Heart wouldn't necessarily be as good as it would be later. So I think it's fine just making this pretty conservative play. And we take 1,200 from that, and they will as well. So honestly, well, actually, that would have still been lethal. Yeah, if we had Change of Hearted here, it would have been lethal because they would have taken damage from the Ring. So yeah. So maybe it would have just been better to Change of Heart there. But I think this is still fine. And they've got Change of Heart. They'll pop our Reaper, hit in to our set with the Turtle. It's a Serpent. We gain 1,000 from the Snatch, add back to that Serpent, but this is just the end of the game because we can bring out this Turtle. We still do have targets in deck because we've got like Shadow Ghoul, Attrition, so this will indeed be the end of the game. So very, very good game 2, I thought, for the deck. I think it's a really good showing for it. Just having all those turtles, having the Book of Life to banish cards out of our opponent's graveyard, very nice as well. So I think that this is a pretty decent showing for it. We do make some changes here. We side out a Delinquent Duo and a Confiscation in favor of 2 Noblemen's Crossouts, as we did see that our opponent is on Magicians of Faith, so they might be on a bit more of a flip-focused strategy. So we're going to bring in those Crossouts for the 2 hand rips that are a bit less live, given that we're going second. And let's see how this goes. We are going to be going second, of course, because we did win game 2. And this is a pretty great opening hand, all things considered. Unfortunately, our opponent will have the Confiscation to rip the Crossout out of our hand. Kind of unfortunate there. And they're going to go for Duo as well, ripping a Pyramid Turtle. And we're actually going to choose to pitch the Mirror Forces. They do know that we've got a Mirror Force. They can just play around it, MST it, etc. So we actually prefer to keep the proactive removal in the form of Raigeki, and also just the monster here in the form of Giant Rat. So they're going to set 1, summon out a Tomato, and pass back to us. Pot of Greed is pretty much the best draw we could have gotten there. And this is actually a really good hand. We've got a couple different options, but we're just going to go for the most aggressive one, summoning out this Reaper, and then firing our Raigeki on their Tomato. Hitting in with the Reaper now. Now, this is a bit risky. There are some things that really punish this, but they know about the Raigeki either way, and Tomato can always get out like a Sangan or a Witch. So I figure it's fine just firing the Raigeki now. Dealing with that, and then trying to get in for a hand rip. Unfortunately, they do have Call of the Haunted, so this will prevent us from getting in for some damage here, and it also lets them get pretty aggressive here. They're going to Reborn the Pyramid Turtle there, and hit in to our Spirit Reaper, which is very unfortunate. We will take a lot of damage here. Although this could potentially give us an opportunity, because we can always crash our Pyramid Turtles, or we could crash our Giant Rat into that Turtle. There's a bunch of different things we can potentially do with that Turtle on the field, so that's going to be nice. We're going to go for a painful choice here because we want to actually deal with the Tomato. As the Tomato is kind of annoying, we can do something where we just crash a bunch of rats into the Tomato, end on like a Pyramid Turtle, crash our Pyramid Turtles together, get out a bunch of monsters to hit into whatever recruiter they bring out potentially. But there are some things that do punish that. and I just want to like get rid of the tomato while allowing the deck thin as little as possible. So I'm going to go for painful right here, and I'm going to send 3 MSTs, an exiled force, and a forceful sentry here. They're already like setting a bunch of back row, so I figure they're not really going to care too much about playing around these MSTs. And so I figure, it's fine if we get those all out of the deck. And if we are able to use it to pop the call and pop the tomato, that would be pretty nice. And we're getting forceful and exiled because exiled also clears the tomato. And forceful, if they do search out a recruiter and we have to hit into that, then we can forceful back whatever they search. So I figured those were good. They're going to choose to add the sentry, which makes sense. They're on very low cards in hand here. So it won't really be as useful. We're going to bring in this Giant Rat, switch the Reaper to defense in case they've got like a Mirror Force here. We don't want to play into that. And, we've got the Forceful for whatever card they get to hand anyways. So we're going to crash into the tomato. They're going to bring out a tomato. We're going to bring out a rat. We're going to crash our rat into that tomato as well. And they're going to bring out a Sangan here. And we're going to bring out another rat there. Then we're going to crash the rat into the turtle, or not necessarily crash, but we're going to pop the turtle. We get a search here, and we're going to bring out a patrician. Then we're going to hit into that Sangan, and then we can always forceful back whatever they get out off of this. They're going to grab an electric snake, and yeah, I actually don't think that I'm going to forceful that because, electric snake is kind of annoying for our Reaper, but we're not attacking with Reaper this turn. So we can always forceful the electric snake back when we go for a Reaper play. So electric snake does work with, it's just by the effect. So it will work with monster effects. So yeah, I'll save the forceful for when I get aggressive and hit in with the Reaper. Unfortunately, they've got Dark Hole, so that will clear our entire board there, and they're just going to pass back to us. Now I think is an okay chance to go for the forceful. We're going to hit in with Pyramid Turtle first, just, to get in, and, if they want to use removal on this, they can, and it gives us a bit more knowledge. But we're going to go for the forceful now, see what they've got, and funnily enough, they've got 2 electric snakes. Kind of unfortunate. I think electric snake is a pretty decent matchup to bring in here. Like, if you've got it in the side deck, you bring it in against zombies, because zombies are playing Spirit Reapers, multiple copies of them, so this can protect against that. So I think it's a pretty decent card to bring in, but it can go wrong if you brick on it like this. So we're going to force sentry back one of them, leave our opponent with another. But yeah, I'm pretty okay with this game state here. We've got our opponent on 3-turn clock. If they do attack into the turtle, we can bring in another monster. They're just going to draw and pass back to us. Sangan's great. It's it increases our clock a little bit. So now we'll be able to hopefully kill them next turn. We're just going to attack in. They're going to set one, pass back to us. We draw a turtle here, so what we could do potentially is just summon out a turtle and hit in with everything that way. That could potentially get lethal. But I think the safer play is to just go for a Shadow Ghoul. So we're going to tribute off that Sangan there. Summon out the Shadow Ghoul. Shadow Ghoul is at 2,400 attack, so we've got 8 monsters in grave. We'll search out a Lily for follow-up, as they are extremely low on life points. We're going to hit into their set. It is a Sinister Serpent, so we actually would have had game here if we had summoned out another turtle, but I think this was the safer play. If we had hit into like a Zelu, that would be pretty bad for us. So I think this is ultimately fine. And they're going to grab back that Sinister Serpent, and they're going to admit defeat. So yeah, they didn't really have anything good here to deal with our board, which can happen. So we did get kind of lucky in the end there, because we were able to get just aggressive pressure while our opponent didn't have any. But I think that this was a pretty good showing for the deck. I think that having all these recruiters was really nice, and these games really did get to show off the Pyramid Turtles and the Rats and all that stuff, as they are very good recruiters. Also, the Book of Life got to shine in Game 2, being able to banish our opponent's monster while also bringing out another one of ours, and I think that was a really cool application of that. So I think this deck does potentially have legs. I think the biggest thing that holds it back is not really having good beat stick targets. Like Shadow Ghoul and Patrician Darkness are really not that good. They can serve as big beaters occasionally, and Patrician Darkness does have a nice redirect effect that can come up occasionally. But overall, they're just nowhere near as good as something like Vampire Lord or Ryukoki, which the zombie deck will get in the future. So the deck still is hampered by that. I don't think that it's tier 1 because of that. but I think that it could easily be like tier 2, as it is a pretty decent deck from my experimentation. But what do you all think? Do you think that I'm sort of overhyping this deck and it's actually a lot worse than I made it out to be? Or do you think that this deck is actually better than I made it out to be, and that with more testing and tinkering, maybe this thing could rise to the top of tier 1? Let me know down in the comments below, and also let me know what you thought of the whole Yata coverage, because this will be sort of my last intended video in Yata format for quite some time, and I think this format was a lot of fun. And I think through exploring it, through the tournament that we run, and also, through the videos that we've had, we've shown that there's a lot of depth to this format that hasn't really been explored. And there's also a lot of gameplay complexity as well that puts this up there with some of the best formats in Yu-Gi-Oh's history. So I highly encourage people, after seeing this video and any of the others that I've gotten, to try it out for yourself. Head on over to the YGO from Zero Discord, linked in the description as always. You can also head on over to other Yata-based Discord servers like Yataopolis, and also Format Library also has a Yata channel for that as well, so you can also play it there. But I think this format is really, really cool. I think it has potential to be one of the most popular retro formats in the game's history, and maybe that's a bit of a stretch because, these DM formats, they don't necessarily get as much love as later formats in the game's history, but I think of the DM formats that I've covered so far, this one is probably one of the best, and I think that it could definitely have a much larger following than it currently does have. So definitely, let me know in the comments what you think of the format as a whole as well. And also if I forgot any other decks that you think I should cover here, because I might, cover them if you want me to. But with that said, I'll probably be moving on into the, well, first I got to move on to cover the sort of unlimited Pharaonic Guardian format, which is, playing all the cards in Pharaonic Guardian at 3 copies each, just to see how that goes. But then I'll be diving in to the next big format, which the name is TBD. I will be holding a vote, probably on the YouTube community page as well as on my Discord as well, just because, I feel like people on the Discord do play it a fair bit, and so, the people who are going to be playing it should probably come up with the name. But it'll probably be something like Breaker format or like Science format or something like that. Those are names that I've heard tossed around. But we'll hold a, general, poll and stuff for that in the coming weekend. So definitely head on over there if you want to participate in that. And also be sure to check the YouTube community page as well, because I'll also be posting a poll for that there as well. But that's going to do it for today's video. I hope that you enjoyed as always. If you did enjoy, please do leave a like and also subscribe to the channel. We're really close to 900 subs. It would be really cool to reach that by the end of October, and I'd really like to reach 1,000 by the end of the year. And with all your support, I'm sure we can do it. But until next time, I've been Ben from YGO from Zero, and I'm signing off.